Hey guys, today we are going to do a long-awaited video that you've been asking for. We're gonna review both of these GT40s back to back, and then Miller and I are gonna drive them and we're gonna give you our impressions of not only which one we like more, but what the integral differences are. So stay tuned, this one's gonna be a lot of fun. All right, guys, why two GT40s? I get asked that all the time because these are both my cars. And there's a story behind each car we won't get into right now, but believe it or not, with how similar these look, they're very different. Not only from some of the exterior features that we're gonna talk about in a second, but also the drivetrains are completely different in both these cars. The experience is kind of unmatched in either one. You're gonna get to see that today. But I think what we'll do, Miller, we'll probably start on the outside. Let's show some of the obvious differences between the two cars. We'll show the inside, we'll show the motors, and then we'll drive. So this car is a GT40 Mark I, and there's some major differences between the Mark I and the Mark II. Number one is the tail end looks a lot different. I personally think that the Mark II looks a lot more aggressive. You'll see that in a second. This car has more of like a gentleman feel. That's how I feel about this car. You'll see it's got the single tail light. Now Mark I's did have an option for a second tail light. This one obviously is single. The center, you'll notice, is the same, but the top is where it gets really interesting. You've got these much wider hips on the sides. For cooling, you just have this open duct here, whereas on the other one, come on, we'll show you, has these snorkels, and then it also has a cooler duct here as well, an intake. So this one is actually for engine cooling. These two are actually for brake cooling. Now these cars at Le Mans used to run 200 miles an hour, and they'd go from 200 miles an hour to 30 miles an hour like that in some of the turns. They needed to figure out a way to significantly cool down the brakes while they were driving, and this is what they came up with. So this obviously is the right brake, that's the left brake. Now, if you stare at the back end, you'll see what I'm talking about, how much more aggressive the back end is. You've got these big dual taillights. The center kind of remains the same. We've got this spoiler here, which helps with some of the downforce on the back side. And then it just has a much more masculine presence, in my opinion. One thing Miller just pointed out, which is a great fact, a great thing to notice, is this intake here, the Mark IIs are known to never have overheating problems. It just has a great way to cool the motor. Air comes in here and exits out the backside. And the Mark I, however, we have these little side ducts here. You'll notice a huge difference between the two. And then you have some exit here just for the heat to come out. And then you also have the rear exit. But I've never had an overheating issue in this car either. But again, I'm not driving it at Le Mans. So, you know, that's a big difference. Since we're on the side profile, I want to talk about something pretty significant. In fact, I'm going to shift you guys around like this to the front of the cars because you're going to get a much better perspective. The front end, you'll notice, looks pretty similar. This has a little bit more of a bubble to it than this, but as we come down the side, you'll notice something pretty significant. Again, this plays into that cooling factor, right? We've got these two large engine cooling scoops here and only one here. So you could tell this has massive cooling difference between both of these, especially when you're driving fast. And then as you come back, I mentioned the hips. Notice how that one protrudes a lot more. And this has kind of more of a sleek, just the way it flows to the back of the car is a lot more streamlined. That's actually one of the most distinguishing factors if you're just looking at one kind of from surface level. One scoop, two scoops, Mark I, Mark II. The little I behind the Mark I, Mark II. That's how I remember it. Anyway, now, since we're at this part of the car, I do want to point out one difference, and this is an option. You'll notice my driver's side on this car does not have a little hump in it. This one does. This is called a gurney bubble. This was for Dan Gurney. He was a race car driver back in the day, and he was so tall, they had to figure out a way so he could fit in the car with his helmet on. We're going to talk about the inside in a minute, but these seats, there's no way to adjust the seats in these cars. So what they do is they fit the seat to the driver by reducing the amount of foam in the pad itself. And he was so tall that this was the only option they had to actually fit him, even with cutting down the seat. So one of the things you'll notice is the side mirrors. Now this is actually pays tribute to the classic mirrors on the race cars. They used to mount them up here like this, and it's actually great because you're driving and then you can just kind of peek over slightly to your left side, and it doesn't get, nothing blocks your view because you're trying to see something here, right? So this is really cool. Now, one thing about these mirrors though, when you're driving, everything looks, you know that, what's that saying, things in mirror appear closer than they appear. It's like written on the modern cars. Well, this makes everything look like it's like 5 miles away. So yes, you can see things rolling up on you, but because of the bubble in the mirror, it's definitely a very interesting perspective. Whereas this is custom. This is a more modern take, and it's a flat mirror, so everything looks like it's right on you. Which one do I like more? Well, for seeing, I like this. For being able to see all the time, I like this. And the reason I say that is because, oh, whoops, I was checking out your car and I just knocked your mirror. Do you know how hard it is to adjust this stupid mirror so that I can see again in the future? If I'm sitting in there, I have to physically get up and out of the car and come over here and go, okay, I guess that it's about right there. I go back, I get all the way back in the car, I go, damn it. So anyway, that's a distinguishable feature. There is something else up front. You'll notice this is a nice flat hood here. This has a little bit of cooling up in the front, just a difference on these. They both do have these little side scoops. And then you'll notice the hood is very different as well. Now, you can option these cars. Like I could have gotten a Mark I that had this very open hood. I just happen to like this. On the Mark II, I actually prefer this style. There's just something about this car feels a little more boxy and masculine again. This one feels more gentleman. I just feel like it's very fitting to the cars. All right, there's something really special I'm gonna tell you about. See these things here? These are hooks. Now this pays tribute to the race cars back at Le Mans. How they did pit runs was they'd pull into the pit and they gotta change the tires, right? So they had this big metal piece with tires on the sides that they would put, it had a bar, it went across, and all they would do is manually pull it down and it would lift the whole front end of the car off the ground. So you'll notice they have a tow hook built in to this hook, and what they would do is they'd come over here to the side, guy with a hammer would be standing here, whack! They'd whack this, it'd spin off, they'd pull the tire, they'd put it back on, whack, and then get it in place, and then they're good to go. Now, they also have hooks, which we did not point out, on the back. So you'll notice those are there as well. Yeah, so when you see that, there's a purpose behind that, and then this is the toe. So fun fact. This is a very classic style. Now, a lot of the original race cars, a lot of the original GT40s had actually parachute material on their seats. This has leather, this was spec. This is the 15th car that Superformance ever built. I'm gonna pause here for a minute and explain what these are. These are built by a company called Superformance. Back in the day, Saffer Spares bought all the licensing, original tooling for when these cars were built and manufactured. What happened was Superformance bought the rights from Saffer Spares. So these are actually real GT40s. These are real modern GT40s. Superformance told me directly they're not replicas, they're not continuations as far as they're concerned. These are built using all of the original tooling back from the 1960s when they built the original cars. That's why they're able to license and call them GT40s, and also why they go in the historic registry with the original cars. Pretty cool. You can actually spec a tool room car which is exactly like the original cars, like almost to a T. So that's pretty neat. In fact, someone recently did a spec on one, I got to see it, and it's just, there are little quirks and differences, but for the most part, I mean, obviously, it's still the same thing. Something about this car that's really interesting, Carroll Shelby did personally sign the dash, which I think is awesome. This was before he passed on. That's definitely a cool feature of this car. The differences inside aren't really significant other than the shifting pattern. This has a dogleg shifter, so this is actually slightly to the left and down. That's first gear. Now, why is this? Well, second gear is forward and third gear is straight back. Now, if you know about these cars and how fast they go, if you're on a track, most of your time is gonna be spent in second and third gear. So it's just an easy way just to not have to think too much about everything else that's going on. And I can tell you, when you're driving these cars, they're a handful. The last thing you want to worry about is what gear you're going into, I'm sure. And I have put this car on a track, and the last thing I wanted to think about was which gear I was in. So anyway, that's the biggest difference. Other than that, you'll notice pretty much everything's the same, except for this is a much more modern take on the GT40 interior. If you come down here, you'll notice now we've got Alcantara. And I think this is a real cool touch. I did add these aftermarket wheels, both of them, the steering wheels. The normal steering wheel is big and round, and while I like it, I'm just a fan of like a Momo or an MPI. So these are MPI steering wheels that we retrofitted with the GT40, just took it off the original wheel. Again, you'll notice first gear is actually forward and to the left. Reverse is actually all the way to the right and forward. This is a Mendiola transmission. I think that's a ZF transmission. And in that car, reverse is left and up, like the original Ford GT. Something pretty cool about this, we'll give you a perspective, but if you look through the back glass, that is a great perspective while you're driving the car. I love looking in the rearview mirror and seeing that, and I have 8 stacks on both these cars. So pretty neat. But as far as sound deadening, they're very loud. When you're riding in this car, it's very, very loud. So generally I'll wear like hearing protection of some sort, even if I'm driving on the street, even if it's an earbud where I can still hear outside, but at least it muffles it a little bit. Other than that, here's the interior of a more modern one. And this is VIN number 2406. So this is the 406th car this Super Performance has ever built. That's the 15th car. So now you're kind of seeing more of a historic version versus a more modern version. All right, so now one of the parts you're probably waiting for is the motors, right? And this is where the significant difference actually lands between these two cars. This is actually fit with a Roush 427. Now we already took this pin, goes in here, it's on both cars. I just snapped my finger, that was fantastic. But how cool is this? I mean, this is basically a motor, some frame, and you driving it. I mean, you really become these cars when you drive them. I'm gonna sidetrack here for a second. This is that scoop that goes down to cool the brakes. You'll see where it vents. Now, this is a Roush 427. This is kind of pushing the neighborhood, I think, of about 600 horsepower. This is fuel injected. We've got our 8 stack. That over there is an oil cooler. I don't know how in detail we want to go. I think we more just want to show you. This is a very high torque, high horsepower motor. So from a stop, and you're going to see it when we drive it, this is a bat out of hell. And this is the one where the having no traction control, you really got to drive the car because this can get away from you. Now, seeing as how the motor is in the back like this, or in the middle, it actually helps a lot with putting the power down. This is really fun to drive. I actually think, I'm gonna tease it, I kind of prefer this car, to be honest. I really just like the raw, low-end torque that this car has. You know, that car is high revving, and I don't know. I think Miller's gonna have to be the one to decide which one he likes riding in more. Because this car is fit with a 5.2 Illuminator crate motor, cross plane crank, try saying that 10 times fast. Cross prank lane. Okay, speaking of snakes, no, I'm just kidding. This is a very high revving motor, and it's rated for about 580 horsepower, but it revs out to 8,000 RPM. That's where redline is, and it sounds amazing when you rev it out like that. Now, this has a Borla 8 stack on it. This is also a fuel injected car. Gone are the days of me having to mess with carburetors, especially in the climate we live in North Carolina. It gets very hot and very cold all of a sudden, right? Same day. I want to just drive my cars and not worry about that. Modern motor, modern performance, modern reliability, never have an issue with this thing. Now, these snakes are all built by hand as part of the build. Phenomenal. I can't believe, it's an art form. They look like a piece of art, don't they? But again, down low, this car doesn't have as much torque as that one. So this car, you really have to kind of get into it, and then, man, 3,500, 4,000 RPM, this car comes to life like nobody's business. It gets nutty. Hopefully that kind of explains, without driving it, that there's a major difference between the way these two cars perform. So what do you think, Miller? Should we go take them for a drive now? I think so. All right, let's close them up. We're gonna take this one first, and let's see how I like it. Can we drive 2 at once? Can we both be in one car but drive them both? That would be awesome. All right, dude.
Have I ridden in this car? Yeah, right?
Well, that's the first difference right here. The seatbelt system I have in both these cars is completely different. This is more of a modern seatbelt with shoulder harnesses. The other one's 4-point.
Yeah, I like this one.
Yep. Ready?
Let's do it.
Okay, so we've been driving for a little while now. So far, pretty smooth, right? Like, it doesn't feel like, you don't feel everything in the road necessarily.
It's very race car though.
Very race car. That guy was just going like this out his window.
It's been a while.
motivating from that seat, isn't it? Woo! Woo! So we warmed up the car before we came out. So I did about a 70, I don't even know what it was at, 72, 7,500 RPM full. I didn't want to go all the way to 8,000 just yet, just because we're still, but I mean, sucker goes. And it's smooth.
Yeah,
again,
it's really smooth.
Like when I got on it, down low.
Yeah, F85 is much raunchier than this.
Dude, much raunchier. You're going that fast when you're driving fast in this. Well, maybe for you it does. For me it doesn't. I looked over, I was like, oh.
Oh, there's three.
I just know when I'm getting towards the higher RPM range in second gear that I'm going very fast. So that was first gear.
That was first, yeah.
No, we're on a closed course, don't worry about it. So let's talk about the sounds this thing makes.
A lot of them.
A lot of them.
Very loud.
And your ears hurt.
Yep.
My ears hurt. It's got such a good sound.
Good sound.
Oh man. We'll do this. So braking's really good.
Yeah.
But I mean, think about how controllable that was. I didn't feel nervous at all. Did you? Like on takeoff or anything?
Yeah, that felt great.
Yeah, having this car, you know, we'll go this way. Having this car have some wiggle room in that lower RPM range is really nice, and that's why it's so significantly different from the other car.
Yep.
Because you can take this out and you can actually cruise it, but then when you want to play around, you can really play.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
You definitely bogeys for sure.
Like imagine, so I know we're not doing it because we're really not trying to go too hard on it today for our own sake. We've been filming a lot. When it's really fun is when you have it in first or second gear at a higher speed and you're in the turns.
Yeah.
It is unbelievable.
We do have a video idea in mind. I do want to mention this really quick before, you know, we start talking a little bit more about these cars. We're planning on taking one of your cars up to the Snake.
Yes.
So 421 the Snake is a road up in Mexico City, and we want to take one of these cars, but we need your help picking. So if you guys want to see one of the GT40s or the Ford GT or maybe even the Shelby, one of the Shelbys.
Yeah, something. Even the Cobra. I mean, whatever you guys want to see. And I know it'll be tough, but we'll have to suffer through it.
Yeah.
By the way, do you notice we can hear each other until about 4,000 RPM?
That's when it's
It doesn't, and then it goes away. So what we're gonna do now is, let's go back and grab F85. Let's do that one more time, and let's just,
have fun.
then they'll really get excited because I get to see the real difference.
Oh yeah.
Probably in our expressions too. All right. This is my favorite.
What's your favorite car?
This is my favorite.
No way.
Already, I mean, so right away, the difference between the two cars, this just feels way more old school.
Yeah.
Again, both amazing experiences, both GT40s are both incredible cars, but this has the slight edge. How does it feel so far, just in general? Seat position?
About the same.
Not the same, right?
Yeah.
Does it feel more like wild just sitting and riding in it than the other one?
It does feel a little bit more raw.
Yeah.
And just like the shifter and like the leather really is era appropriate, I guess,
Yeah.
more than the Alcantara.
Yeah.
But other than that, like, it feels pretty similar, but I know what is hiding and I know it's secret. So that's where I'm like, all right, I know it's a different car.
It's totally different.
I can't wait to scare kids.
That's totally different.
I literally just, I finished my words. I can't wait to scare Casey, and then I just got scared.
Dude, the front end on this car lifts up all that torque.
Yeah.
Dude, this thing wants to go.
And it hooks. There's no spinning.
It puts all the power down, dude. And the funny thing is, think about it. You see, these cars are almost exactly the same horsepower
Yep.
and drive totally different.
That's crazy.
So when people ask me why two GT40s,
That's why. Yep.
now you know firsthand. I wish you guys could experience what he just did from that seat. Because that seat's fun, but not fun. Like if you get scared of riding in cars, that's not the seat you want to sit in. This car definitely has much more of a raw feel overall. I mean, the steering wheel feels great because this is a little bit more modern.
Yeah.
But as far as just everything else, like even like the little bit of rattle, do you notice how you feel more of the bumps in this car too?
Oh, yeah.
The way the suspension's set up?
Yep.
The other car felt more more polished.
Yeah, it did.
Right?
This is very little race car feel like.
The good thing is, this is the one we bought this to track it.
Yeah.
Like I want to get this on the track more, and I can actually fit in this car barely with my helmet on.
Yeah.
The other car, I had to like slouch and sit forward just to fit. Okay, is that wild or what? Dude, coming around that turn, did you feel like I had to be the car? The car's wanting to like do its thing, and you just got to make sure your inputs are correct. Do you see why I lean towards this car as my favorite?
Yeah.
It like
You really do have a GT40 for every occasion.
I know. Seriously, because like we took the Ford GT, the 05 to lunch today, and how comfortable was that? We were like, oh, this is
regular.
This is awesome.
You took a phone call. You can't take a phone call in these cars.
I feel like I have a much bigger smile in this car at all times.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I am so glad this car came back on the market for me to pick up because I really missed it.
Yeah.
And now I'm at the point, I just love it so much. It confirmed everything I thought of all my regret for the last 1.5 or 2 years. And now I can never sell this car. All right, well, I guess for the rest of the journey home, it's gonna be about 10, 15 minute drive, 20 minute drive, I don't know. Yeah. We're gonna let you guys go. We'll catch up here. Casey, here we go, ready? Dude, these mirrors, it's impossible to see what I just saw.
Oh, yeah.
I had so much plus between those two things. Well, they heard my impressions. What are your impressions? Oh, shit, that's a tire.
Oh,
Almost died, took his camera.
I love this car because this is what started it all.
Yeah.
But I also love this car because it's much more modern. It's a little more tame, but you still get a GT40. Whereas this is race car.
Yeah, anyway, thank you for coming along. I hope you enjoyed this video. We've been waiting to do this for a long time. In the future, we're gonna actually have Miller drive one and me drive one, and we're gonna have camera car because we wanna get some footage of us having some fun in these and just for your viewing pleasure too. You can see them from the outside. So with that being said, I think, Miller, we gotta plug some poles in these cars at the end of the video. So here we go, let's do it. Thanks again.